Hey guys, kinggath here with another patch for Sim Settlements. This is patch 4.1.6, which I'm calling Pandora's Box. And you will understand what that means if you are playing through Jammer's Questline and you head to him right now, because it's going to unlock the next leg of the questline. Now, for those of you guys who are not playing, I am going to start out by talking about all the stuff that's relevant to everybody, and then I'll jump back to the Jammer's Questline players. So we'll get to that stuff at the end. So there's a couple of things I want to cover. First, I'm going to go over a couple of things that are in this patch, specifically some new information, a major bug fix we've got, and then I'm going to talk about the new patch cycle. And then finally, we'll jump back to Jammer's Questline talk. All right, so first up is there are some things we started popping into the gameplay loop of Conqueror to help people who aren't necessarily going through Jammer's Questline but are playing with the faction packs, and those are going to be some pop-ups to give you guys information. So most of that stuff had been buried in Jammer's Questline because Jammer's Questline was always designed to, well, I would say it wasn't always, it was originally designed to be the training wheels to get people started with the Conqueror mechanics, and then it evolved into much more. But some players aren't going through that, they don't want to go through that, and so we want to make sure that you guys who are just playing with faction packs still get an opportunity to learn how to play the Conqueror mechanics right in the game without having to go and watch hours of live stream video. And so that has started to happen, so you might start seeing pop-ups coming up explaining different mechanics to you, even if you're not playing through Jammer's Questline. The next thing is a bug fix that has been a long time coming, and that is the solution to the Industrial Revolution magazines. So some of them had been causing crashes for people when they placed them inside of magazine racks, and we couldn't figure it out for the longest time, but Pra was finally able to sort that out. He realized that some of our textures weren't in exponents of 2, which apparently is a big no-no, and this engine does not like it. So we fixed that. We have packaged that up, so if you were receiving random crashes in some settlements, there's a chance that it might have been due to you having a magazine press from Industrial Revolution in that settlement, and this will resolve that. So definitely update Industrial Revolution or the 3-in-1, whichever you're using, and that might resolve a crash for you all of a sudden. And the next thing I want to talk about is the patch cycle. So you may have noticed that the last few patch cycles we have missed our normal bi-weekly schedule. So for the longest time, basically since release, I've been releasing a patch at least every 2 weeks, with few exceptions. Usually right before a new expansion comes out, I'll slow it down a little bit so I can focus up on that. But for the most part, we've been hitting patches every 2 weeks for over 2 years now. And it has not come without its tolls. There are a lot of bugs that squeak through testing because of that vicious patch cycle. Sometimes we end up cutting features that we want to get in with our story content or with our quests that we put into the plots. And so rather than having to make those sacrifices, we're going to just slow down our patch cycle a little bit. We're going to make it every 3 weeks. And that should buy us the time we need to get proper Q&A done on things, to get a little more content squeezed into each of our patches. And because of this longer patch cycle, I am going to be a little more open to doing hotfix patches when necessary, because obviously we don't want to leave you guys high and dry with broken games for multiple weeks at a time. So I definitely keep reporting any game-breaking bugs you find, or any bugs at all, even little tiny annoyances, I will definitely fix eventually. But game-breaking bugs, when those get reported on our forums, there are enough people on the forums who have direct contact with me who can relay that information to me if they're able to verify and replicate the issue, that they can tell me how to do it, and I can get it hotfixed out pretty quickly. So definitely keep those up on the simsettlements.com forums. All right, and then one more thing before we go back into the Jammer's Questline stuff is that I want to talk about the next expansion, and not necessarily in the details of it, but in one of the changes that's going to happen with it. So if you're one of our 25 plus patron subscribers, you've already heard this from me, but to everybody else, one of the things that's changing in the development cycle with Conqueror that's different than what we have done in the past is previously with our expansions, once we get to about a 1-year mark, we kind of wrap up that expansion and we call it done, and then we move on to the next one, and then we focus on that for a year. And that's been our pattern for the past 2 expansions. Now, there was overlap between Industrial Revolution and Rise of the Commonwealth, where Industrial Revolution's last half of its content didn't come until about a year after it was released, came all at once as the great big R&D patch. And yes, I know there's still a quest that's left hanging. We are working on that in Industrial Revolution, but for the most part, Industrial Revolution and Rise of the Commonwealth are completely wrapped up. With Conqueror, the plan is going to be that it's going to continue to be developed for a long time, because it kind of opened up a whole new avenue of gameplay for settlements, and so we don't want to completely lose focus on that. We really like that aspect, but realize it's not for everybody, so that's going to be kind of co-developed along with whatever we do in the future. And it's got a huge depth depth that we can do to it. If you guys have watched my live streams, you know we've talked about the phase 3 mechanics, and that is something massive. It's going to take us way longer than a year to get all of that stuff that we planned done. So the Conqueror is going to go well beyond 1 year. So that means that at some point in the middle of Conqueror's post-launch content, another expansion will come out. I don't have a timeline for that, but all of that is to say that another benefit of this every 3-week schedule is that I will be able to put more effort also into the next expansion, so that you guys will be able to see that a little sooner than you might have otherwise. So this 3-week schedule, I think, is going to be perfect. I think it's a long enough cycle where we can get out better content, can give me a little more free time in between patches to do other things, and also still be tight enough that we can get out bug fixes for your current playthroughs. Because I think anything longer than 3 weeks, and you guys are probably wrapping up your characters and are moved beyond any of the bugs that you ran into. So I think that covers it for any of you who are not Jammer players. But if you are into Jammer's Questline, I want to talk about a few things with it. So with this patch, I started designing some new systems. So I've now had basically a year to learn about character and dialogue based quest content. Prior to Conqueror, I had done virtually none. If you look at the stuff that's in Sim Settlement so far, it's very minimal as far as character dialogue. We had a character named Magnum. We had a character in the Hydration Research Center, and another one named Tom. Just a few characters, maybe 3 or 4 characters total. Very minimal. And that was the extent of my experience with quest dialogue and designing complicated quests. And those were relatively simple compared to what we've done with Conqueror. And so now I've taken all that I've learned and I've started to systemize it. And I've now developed a few new systems that are going to smooth out some of the problems we've had with the quests in Conqueror so far. So a couple of the problems you guys have mentioned to me over and over again, and some of you have been getting very irritated with, because you want to just enjoy the quest line without having to deal with reloading your saves. And I understand, and it's definitely been on my mind this whole time. And every patch cycle, we try and improve our methods. And so this time I've made some massive improvements. So I'm looking forward to hearing your guys' reports on any issues that crop up in this new quest content, because this is all using this new framework. And this new framework does a couple of things that we've done differently. So one of the things you guys have talked about is that we rely too much on NPC pathing, and that ends up causing a lot of quests to kind of break down. And so one of the things I've done is I've started to put in hooks where after a certain amount of time, if AI pathing is causing a problem, the teleportation is now an option. So I've been previously avoiding that because it's unimmersive, but now I've found a way to hide it behind camera trickery, so that basically as you approach the lead character in a conversation and they start talking, I can teleport in the other characters behind you, so that we can have our cake and eat it too that way. So that's one of the tricks that I've started to weave in. Another is that some of these scenes are set to automatically repeat themselves if they break. So some of these scenes, if you find that they just totally break down, some of them, if you go and sleep or wait for just a small period of time and come back, it might trigger itself to start up again automatically. This is especially useful for those scenes that start in the settlements, because, for example, a raid could trigger in the middle of it and interrupt it, or depending on where things were constructed, the NPCs could be in terrible positioning where they couldn't possibly get into the positions needed for the scene to actually run. So these are some of the systems that we've put into place to try and smooth things out and reduce these irritating glitches that have come up for a lot of you guys. And we are going to go back and roll through all of the older quests and apply the same methodology to them. But first, we want to make sure this new content is nice and smooth. So if you guys haven't run into any issues with this new content, definitely report it on the forums. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that so that we can get this new framework really, really well polished up before I go back and apply it to all of the older content. So that way, future playthroughs you guys do aren't going to be full of those obnoxious issues. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about with that. I know some of this scene work is more frustrating than fun for you guys, and for us it's so much fun to see, because I think the writing and voice acting on it is fantastic, and we hope you guys will enjoy it, especially after we solve and clean up all the little rough edges around that stuff. So definitely report anything you run into with this new quest content. If you find that the new quest content isn't triggering right away, one of the reasons that might be is due to a backlog of the character scenes. So some of you guys may or may not have noticed, but periodically when you're in HQ, some of the major characters will have these little scenes that they play out, and you don't have to stick around for them. But if those had been backed up in a queue on your game and they weren't triggering for some reason, those should all be fixed now with this patch, and those are going to start firing. And all you have to do after one finishes, just sleep. It'll trigger the next one, and just keep doing that until Jammer finally has a new scene for you, and that will initiate the next batch of quest content. So we've got lots more quest content in the pipes. We've got lots of new features for those of you who stuck around, who aren't going through the Jammer quest line for Conqueror, as I mentioned. So keep an eye out for more updates, and definitely keep an eye out for those in-depth tutorial videos so that those of you guys who have been struggling with the new Phase 2 Conqueror mechanics can enjoy them. All right, guys, all that said, take care and enjoy the mods.